I'm really interested in helping people that are in that executive world, wanting to perform at their best, but also want to know, hey, I think there's something more out there. What's my purpose? Why am I here? Why am I doing all this? How do I take care of myself? How do I feel something deeper in my life? Because I have an insatiable thirst that's not being fulfilled by what I'm doing. And, so sort of walking the path that I've walked, I see myself as a bridge between those two worlds.
In today's busy world, how can we find the inspiration, knowledge, and energy to live a healthy and empowered life? If we balance and harmonize our mind, exercise our body, live according to the laws of nature, and connect to spirit, can we find a way to heal, become our authentic self, and live our purpose with love? I am your hostess, Amy Fournier, and welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite. Welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. Have you ever noticed or wondered how there's just a difference between people who know how to make a living and can make money and be quote-unquote successful in their careers, and then people who know how to live, who live in a way that is fulfilled and they're happy and they have meaning in their lives and they feel good in their body and they like who they are. They have good self-esteem with healthy boundaries and good relationships and feel like they have purpose in their lives. Why is it that our material success and often our business, career, professional success is not necessarily correlated with our personal success? How many times have you seen somebody who's super successful at work, but they have like a nightmare relationship, or they have issues with their kids, or their body is sick and they're on all kinds of medications and they have problems? Really, really common, right? So my guest today, Jason Pickard, is truly someone who's become an expert at this because this was his story. This is a man who has gone from extreme monetary professional success. I mean extreme, my friends, like managing billions of dollars. And at the same time, his personal life was a mess. And I will say personal as his physical body, his physical vehicle. In fact, he was actually obese, and he had a deep, profound sense of no meaning in life. He just, in spite of all the monetary things that you could possibly have and all his professional dreams, not only reached but succeeded, or exceeded, I should say, he still felt a profound sense of emptiness. And I know if you're in a financial situation where you're like, yeah, I'd like that problem, it's just amazing to see how common that is, right? But Jason Pickard has become truly the wise teacher because he has walked this path and can now look back in retrospect and help those of us who are walking behind him in it. So he really is the epitome of a wise man at this point in his life. We also share a very common bond. We both have the privilege of knowing Paul Chek, who is the grandfather of holistic health and wellness and the founder of the Chek Institute, among many other titles. We both have the privilege of being long-term clients and good friends with Paul Chek. Jason, in fact, is Paul's longest client going on about 11 years. And become quite soul family to Paul. So we have that in common. In fact, just a little backstory on Jason. While he was still in his 20s, he was managing $1 billion portfolio in the stock market. He was also a business partner to someone that was his idol and mentor, Paul Tudor Jones, who was one of the most successful traders. Jason enjoyed the constant demands of this high-pressure, high-power position, manifesting millions through tracking the weather and its impact on global commodity markets. But with hundreds of millions of dollars at stake every moment, the job can easily kill you, as Jason says. He was 26 years old, educated at the University of Virginia, ranked as one of the top traders under 30 in the entire world. But he weighed 330 pounds. He didn't have a clue how to live successfully in his own body, and so he was in a very precarious state of health. Fortunately, it was on this razor-sharp edge between life and death that Jason finally became willing to change his focus and direction. After rapidly mastering the world of money, he soon shifted his focus to becoming a master of his own inner world. And I will add, we can't contribute to harmonizing the outer world until we first take care of our own garden. So we first have to harmonize and master our interior landscape before we can really have real valuable impact on the outside world. And this is something that Jason has definitely started to do, as you will learn in this show. How did he start this? How did he go from such an extreme to, like, where do you even begin? Ultimately, he chose to walk away entirely from this successful pathway to the extreme wealth that he had achieved in order to apply his energies and passions towards something more closely aligned with his heart and soul purpose. So ultimately, he could find meaning and value in his life, which he was looking for. Jason soon was impelled to find ways to access and utilize his greatest capacity for authentic expression. And isn't that what we're all doing? And he tried to do this on every level of his existence. He risked everything he had to follow a path that led from consumption to sustainability, from achievement and accomplishment to contribution and nourishment of our innately spiritual nature. Here are some of the qualities that actually motivate Jason's relentless pursuit of total self-actualization, which he is on every moment of every day. Number 1, the courage to embark on a deep inner journey using ancient and contemporary healing modalities. 2, a driving curiosity to understand his own psychology, physiology, and spirituality so as to gain personal mastery on all areas of interest. Number 3, the determination to use all of the spirituality, the knowledge, the skills, the qualities he cultivates for both his personal evolution and to assist others to achieve a deeper level of well-being. And then we get into the divine masculine and feminine polarities. Wow, what a great discussion. That's toward the end. You definitely got to hit that part up. Jason is a wealth of detailed, in-depth knowledge about some areas of that I am not well versed on. So I was all ears. He really gets into nice detail about the Vedas and Shiva and Shakti and those polarities and that fluid balance between the two, where we have similar ideas that we are all a blend of the essence, and it's an essence and an energy rather than a gender. And really cool concept of how men have cycles similar to women. So it was a really cool opportunity to get a man's perspective. And lastly, I asked Jason what his unique medicine is in the world after this amazing life journey that he's had of extreme highs and lows and still going strong. What is your unique medicine, Jason? Because he has so many talents. He's so talented and loving and just such a beautiful human being. And just for that matter, my friend, just keep in mind, we all are born with unique medicine to bring the world, and it's otherwise known as your gift. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. You don't have to be on TV or a superstar and have millions of followers to have a very valuable lesson and medicine to bring the world that is truly unique to you. So if you can find someone in the world who believes in you, who encourages you to cultivate and follow that trail, that path, that unique love, passion, enthusiasm, inspirational track that you have in you, hang on to that person and thank them, because we all need that encouragement to just play our own song, sing our own song, dance our own dance, and go for it. So I asked Jason, what's your unique medicine, Jason? Wow, he has so many. I know you're going to love this show. Jason Pickard is now joining us. All right, and welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. Today, my guest is Jason Pickard. Jason, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Amy. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, my friend, we have something major in common. As you know, we are both longtime clients of Mr. Paul Chek. You have the honor of being his longest running client ever and one of his best, closest soul brother friends. I have the honor of being his longest running female client, but you have totally lapped me in the longevity of your relationship with Paul. So, do you maybe want to share with us your experience with your journey walking so long alongside Paul Chek and what you've been learning and what you want to share with our audience?
Sure. Yeah, I either have a lot to learn or I'm a good student. I'm not sure. Probably a little bit of both.
Uh-huh.
But I think it's good to start with the beginning for me. When I was a kid, my first loves were drumming and magic, and I just was so inspired to do these things naturally, without really any influence from my parents or from my society, my culture, or my school, to get into these things at a very young age. And that dream quickly got away from me as life sort of started making its impressions on me of what was expected of me and, how to survive in this material world. And I quickly picked up the dream of becoming a famous Wall Street trader. I was very inspired at a young age by witnessing these great trading role models in my life. My father was on Wall Street, and in the 80s and 90s, when I was growing up, he was on the cutting edge of these budding hedge fund businesses in this new world of this sort of wild, wild west of trading. And I got to see all of these incredible people, including the person who eventually became my mentor and my boss, Paul Tudor Jones, who is considered one of the greatest, if not the best, traders of all time. So I had a very mainstream education, focused on academics throughout high school, went to the University of Virginia, a great university, and I really was solely focused on becoming this great trader. By 26 years old, I got my dream job at Tudor Investments with my childhood idol, Paul Tudor Jones, and I was focusing on trading weather, where I was working with a meteorologist and learning how the weather impacted various commodity markets. I was super successful. I was running a $1 billion portfolio. I was the youngest person ever to become partner at this very esteemed hedge fund. By the age of 27, I was one of the top 30 traders under 30 in the world. But despite all of this, I weighed 330 pounds. I didn't have a clue how to live successfully in my own body, and I was in an extremely precarious state of health. So I had this paradox that to the degree I was successful, I was completely unsuccessful in taking care of myself. I realized that despite having learned all of these tools about how to be a business person, I didn't learn anything about how to take care of myself. I felt a really deep aloneness, a smallness, and despite this huge personality on the outside and this huge body and this huge appetite for trading and being bigger and better, I was that unconfident about myself. I realized all these things I was chasing on the outside were not making me feel good on the inside. I partied bigger and bigger. Went to the best clubs. I had limousines, champagne, private jets, tons of people surrounding me, but nothing filled me up on the inside. After a really life-threatening leg infection that I got around the age of 27, I started asking bigger questions. What's the point of all this? What's the point of making all this money, of working so hard, if I'm not even going to be alive to enjoy it or experience it or share it? I didn't have any love in my life. I didn't have any intimate partners. My family at that time didn't live where I was living in New York City. I had really great friends, but I just felt this real deep emptiness. At that time, I met a trainer from Hungary. His name is Csaba Lukasz, and he was a Czech-trained trainer. And we went into a very Rocky style, underground in the financial district, kind of major exercise program. And he was the perfect fit for me at that time. And we spent 2 years just grinding it out in the gym. I worked my butt off before work, after work, sweating, climbing up stairs with sandbags on my back, doing every kind of primal pattern movement and just working my butt off to lose 170 pounds, from 330 pounds to 160 pounds. But I realized at that time that really all I had done was transfer my addiction to excess, to partying, and to being bigger and looking for accomplishment and achievement and acknowledgement from the outside, to something that was more socially acceptable. People now kind of looked at me different. You know, women were looking at me different. Men were looking at me different. My colleagues were looking at me different. But I didn't feel any different on the inside. I still felt that same loneliness and that same smallness, and I didn't have that confidence in who I was. So Chapa kind of reached a point where he felt as if, you know, we might be at the end of what we could do together, and we were looking for sort of more support. You know, we had just lost the weight, but still I felt this emptiness. So we sent a video of myself working out in his gym to Paul Chek. We emailed Paul Chek and said, okay, look at this stud, you know, look at him doing squats and running and doing this and that. And Paul wrote back and said, this guy went from soggy white bread to burnt toast. He needs to take 2 years off from exercise. He needs to completely just drop exercise completely. Yeah. And to me, that was a complete cracking of my shell. My whole life was exercise at that point. I really had shut out all of the other things and was solely, very rigidly focusing on exercise. And I had this idea of, well, what am I going to do, right? What am I going to do with myself if I can't even exercise? So I went through all of these very sort of, again, dogmatic stages where I learned about working in, but then I went and found a Qigong master, and the Qigong master says, okay, you know, you got to stand in tree pose with your arms out. And I would sort of take that to the 15th level by standing in my house with my arms, you know, like hugging a tree for 45 minutes or an hour, where my whole body is completely shaking and I'm going into, you know, spasms. And I'm thinking, I'm working in. So finally I realized I needed to learn more. And I went out and I met Paul Chek in around 2009 or 2010. I spent 2 or 3 or 4 days with him. I went into that experience not having any really creativity inside myself, not really having any confidence, not really feeling any connection to anything greater, and feeling that deep aloneness, like I talked about, and this kind of really strong rigidity. And I had my first shamanic experience with Paul, and I felt like an 800-pound gorilla just came off my back. And I just felt reborn. And it was just this incredible awakening where I just felt this creativity and this love and this playfulness and this curiosity for life and this mystery flowing through me. And then I applied that same thirst for knowledge that I had in trading. I placed that into learning about Paul's work. And I learned everything I could from him. I would email him every day. I'd be journaling about the 4 doctors, which I'm sure many of your audience members know, but just in case they don't, Dr. Diet, Dr. Movement, Dr. Quiet, and Dr. Happiness. These are the 4 components of one's life. You know, what are you eating? What are you drinking? How are you digesting your emotions? How are you moving your body? Are you moving too much? Are you moving too little? Are you getting enough quiet time, Dr. Quiet, and rest and introspection, reflection, meditation, sleep? And do you have a purpose in your life? Do you have a dream? Do you have a North Star where you're going? So I started learning about all this. I started journaling it and asking Paul a million questions daily. And I started learning about all these 4 doctors. I got exposed to all sorts of different teachers, from meditation to Tai Chi to shamanism and various other indigenous techniques and religions. And I just really had this insatiable thirst for knowledge. I then brought that into my trading life. So now here I am on Wall Street, but I'm bringing the 4 doctors into the trading world. So now I'm taking my desk out from this row of long trading desks and having a standing desk that's going up and down, and I'm sitting on a Swiss ball, and I'm kneeling at my desk, and I'm learning about feng shui, and I'm learning about EMF protection, bringing my own food to work, bringing my own water, feeling for the first time that I have a purpose greater than just going and making money. And this just continued, you know, and just in keeping with Paul Chek, this relationship has continued for the last 10 or 11 years through a total whirlwind of my life, through ups and downs, through divorces, through deciding to leave the Wall Street world in 2019 to become a therapist and to help others and teach some of the experiences that I've learned. But this thread of being with Paul has never vanished.
Quite the story, Jason. Amazing. You know, I think it's very common in particularly the American culture and probably just Western civilization that, you know, we can make a living and maybe even be taught how to make a living, but we're not necessarily taught how to make a life.
Yeah.
And how to live, you know, how to live in a way that is harmonious, and, you know, all four doctors going full tilt, and also in a way that fulfills us. That's for sure. I mean, how your story with the omission of the Paul Chek connection part, I think is very, very common. It could be everybody's story, right? I mean, everybody's looking for that sense of connection, purpose. Why am I here? What is the meaning of all this? Particularly the older we get, right? Like,
yeah.
what is this all for? You know?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that a little bit,
Please.
and I think this starts with really the main problems in our
Mm-hmm.
education system. So in Sanskrit, they have the word Adhi, Kari, which is adjusting an education for a particular person based on their readiness for that knowledge, based on their current life experiences and their past life experiences, and looking at them astrologically, looking at their astrological chart to see which one of four of these varnas, which are incorrectly now colonized as the word caste system, and we can kind of get into that if you want, but these four varnas of the Brahmin, which is the professor, the Kshatriya, the warrior, there's the producing class, which is like the business person, which I was on Wall Street, or someone who's producing, you know, farming, or the provider of services. So in these ancient cultures, they would look at a child and they would say, okay, based on your astrological chart, what are you most inclined to be good at in this world? What are you most likely to be functional at? Then through a series of questions and tests, they would test that person to see, are they more likely to be a warrior? Are they better off to go to the police force or the FBI or the army? Are they better off to be a professor type? Should they be a teacher? Should they be a wisdom teacher? Should they be a priest, a rabbi, a guru? Should they be a banker, you know, etc.? And then they would look at not only what are you born into based on the planets, not only what are you seem ready for based on your skills, based on these various questions and tests, but also what do you love to do? And all of this would be then geared around a very specific education for that person, so that they customized, so that they could be a functional, thriving member of society. Now, what do we do in our culture? We just pile more and more useless information, for the most part, onto people and look them all as the same, as if they're
homogenous system.
Yeah, as if they're on a manufacturing line. Of course, systems like the homeschooling and Waldorf systems created by Rudolf Steiner have more of what I'm talking about, because they're really based in these ancient traditions. But in terms of mainstream modern education, it's not looking at any of this stuff. It's saying, okay, you all have to be a certain way. We're going to teach you all the same way, despite that you might be a visual learner, or you might be an auditory learner, or you might be a kinesthetic learner, or you might be more inclined to be a teacher or a warrior or a producer or a provider. And what do you love to do? What is not just labor to you, but a labor of love? Coupling that with these basic teachings that we can say the four doctors, which would be taught in kindergarten. In the yogic tradition, they would be teaching them correct practices, how to be moral, how to eat, how to use proper language, how to stay clean, how to do asana or different various, movement postures, how to breathe properly, how to work with mantras. And then eventually, as they go up, would learn more of this sort of psychological worldview and learn more larger connections, or how they fit into the larger whole. And all of this would be geared around this education system. But I didn't realize any of this until I was in my 30s, despite being very privileged and going through wonderful schools in high school, and then going to one of the top universities in the world. And so one of my real passions, which is why I sit on the board of the Contemplative Sciences Center at the University of Virginia, which is a wonderful center that is created to really bring this kind of stuff back into education, starting in elementary school, really, where this stuff should be taught. We should be given, we have these handbooks to how to be successful, or we have huge manuals for how to drive our car, but nobody gives us a manual on how to use our body, and in particular, how to use the specific body that we have incarnated into in this lifetime. And so that's what education really is to me, and I think that's really what's missing, and that's what was missing in my experience, and that's what I think is missing more broadly, specifically across our Western culture right now.
And what I hear you saying with that is that it helps the person self-actualize because it helps promote self-knowledge. I mean, it helps the child actually learn who they are, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what their potential is. And, and we share also our love of shamanic practices and Native American teachings and wisdom and medicine. And I know in Native American cultures, it's common when they're teaching children how to use a bow and arrow, they first have the child pull back the bow and shoot the arrow as far as they can. See how far you can get that arrow. And then only after that do they teach the child how to direct the arrow and aim at a target. So that's symbolic for our lives, and that they also teach children about self-knowledge. Self-knowledge comes first, and then only after that do you then zero in and target, okay, now you're going to take your life in this way.
Yeah.
And it's totally different than our Western American way, unfortunately.
And the big part about that self-knowledge is teaching children who you really are. Mm-hmm. Meaning, are we identifying with this body, this vehicle, this car that we're driving? Mm-hmm. Or are we something deeper, which in our culture we call the soul, or in the Vedas we call Atma? Mm-hmm. We are not this body. This is something that we're inhabiting now for a particular purpose, a particular body that we chose to take to play out a particular role, our dharma in society, to learn and to grow and to give back and to support and to be in this purposeful universe. But nobody is teaching children about that, who they really are. That they're not even teaching them about the body, but they're not teaching them the deeper step, which is don't even identify with that too much, because what you are is not even that. You are what lives inside of that, which sees through those eyes. Mm-hmm. The consciousness that is seeing through that body, that's immortal, mm-hmm. and a very important individual that has come here with a purpose.
I love that. And I know with your experience, your study, and your work, and you mentioned a little bit in the beginning of the show about tapping in as a child. You said that you loved drumming and magic as a child. Yeah. And I know a lot of your current study and work involves kind of factoring in, thinking back to when we were children. And you and I have had conversations about that. And you've asked me, what were some of your childhood dreams? I would love for you to share with us your experience with the value of going back to our childhoods. And this is, for the audience, like, okay, if we can all take us back, like, where would you, lead us, to think about, okay, start thinking about your dreams as a child. And, we hear the expression, I'll just say real quick, we hear the expression, think of what you love to do as a kid and then do that, but I'm sure you have a lot more richness to share with us in that regard than just that little sediment.
Well, I think what you're saying is very true, because there is a simplicity to it. Mm-hmm. What you love to do as a child before you get encultured by other people's belief systems is usually your soul's inclination of what you're good at. It's what you're ready for. It's the same thing of teaching you're an Atma, you're here for a particular purpose, and looking at what you love to do. One of my children loved horses from the time she was born. And so it's just a really big thing for me to remember to always support her in that way, and never to say, that's not going to lead anywhere. You can never make any money, being horses. You have to even make a lot of money even to have horses or something like that. But no, just, go for that. If you want to work with horses, if you want to ride horses, that's what you should do. And, so many children come in with these gifts. How does Mozart write a symphony at age 4 or 7 or whatever he did. There's these incredible talents that we all come in with, which must mean that we have past life influences and that we're coming here with a certain level of knowledge that is not the same for all individuals, and that we're coming here with a particular purpose. Now, in terms of the childhood dream or our earliest childhood experiences that we now remember as adults, this is the work of Arnold Mendel in process-oriented psychology, or process work, of which I'm a student at, and which I work in that way. And so he believes that our earliest childhood memories or our earliest childhood dreams that we remember are sort of our life myth. They're this pilot wave that it's driving through our life, sort of like our life's purpose, or the dreaming level of our life of why we're here. So the best way to kind of shed some light on this would be to share my own example, I think, and then people can just contemplate their own experience. When I was about 6 or 7 years old, this actually happened. This is not, I do have early childhood dreams, but this is just a particular experience. You don't have to be limited to any one experience, but there are many different flavors of this. But when I was 6 years old, I came home with my first report card to give to my mother. And there was this idea that if I got a good report card, I was going to get rewarded with some kind of material gift. And so I come home with this report card. I'm super excited. I show it to her, and she says, well, your grades really aren't good enough for a gift, for a reward. And I flipped out, and I threw myself in the air, and I hit my head on this big flower pot and cracked the pot open and cracked my head and had to get rushed to the hospital, and the story continues. All with very interesting metaphors and symbolism. But if we just look at that part of the story, I look at my life and I say, I was driven as a student. I was driven as a trader, which is a career that is a constant report card. Every single day, you're getting a report card about how you're doing, and you're only as good as your last trade, or you're only as good as the last tick on the chart. So you're constantly getting this feedback of how well you're doing. And I exceeded in that career, which is interesting because these childhood dreams, Arnie says, hold our core wounding and our core powers. So on one hand, that dream held my core power, which was what drove me to the top of Wall Street and what drove me to be this great student of Paul's and of other teachers and do really well in school. I had this drive, but at the same time, it's what drove me to be 330 pounds because I can never feel like I had enough. I can never feel that accomplishment or that acknowledgement. I was always chasing that feeling of getting rejected from my mom about the report card. So it was a double-edged sword. It was this motivation to succeed, but also drove me into, paradoxically, into these sort of negative, unhealthy, unsustainable states that I was feeling. This loneliness, like I can never be fulfilled. And interestingly enough, these childhood dreams or these earliest childhood memories also hold the medicine. So for me, what's primary in that dream is this trying to get the report card, this action of very direct, a linear sort of action-oriented, more not gender-based, but more of a masculine, logical report card feedback-oriented. And the secondary thing of the letting go, the falling back, the surrendering, the floating through the air, and then the cracking of pots, the cracking of my mind, the opening up of my mind, and the opening up of others' minds. And what emerges?
The breaking of the shell.
Breaking of the shell, and what emerges is the flower out of the pot. Mm-hmm. And so that's just a little bit of how I work with that in my own life, and how it's really been a metaphor for my own life and me transitioning into this new career and getting out of the Wall Street career, transitioning from a place of trying to be the driver and the controller to being surrendering, going from a place of doing to a place of being, kind of going from that report card to going into that opening of the shell or cracking of the pot or cracking of others' pots, opening up my mind. It's going from a more masculine orientation to a more feminine, or a logical to a illogical, all these different components. But this is something that is present in my life every single day that I'm constantly working on. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, okay, I got to meditate, I got to exercise, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do that. And that's that same energy of that primary identity in the dream of that report card. And then I got to remember, oh, but what about that second part? What about that letting go? What about that surrendering? And what's interesting is it's not pushing away that first one, which I've tried to do. I said, okay, I'm not going to be that trader. I'm not going to be that action-oriented guy. But it's actually about being fluid between the two states, because that's a strength of mine, and so is the surrendering. When do I need to do action? When do I need to push? When do I need to pull? And when do I need to let go? And how to move between all of those and use them to my advantage to create my wholeness.
Wow, there's so much in that, Jason, right there. I mean, what you just said at the very end is basically the whole premise of my show, is the harmonization and dance of the two polarities that are in all of us. And I'll add that, in the Tao symbol, the Tai Chi symbol, the Yin Yang symbol, the boundary between the two is not a straight line on purpose. It's an S. It's a curve. It's sinuous. And that is to symbolize the fluidity between the two polarities, the masculine and feminine in all of us. It's a constant wave of the back and forth. So I definitely want to get more into that, but I just want to also comment, because you said something very important about the overeating when you were actually obese, and you mentioned how it was just a profound sense of emptiness. So you couldn't get full, so you just kept eating. So many people can identify with that. I mean, hello, anyone that's ever emotionally ate. I know I have so many times in my life. I've gone from one extreme of borderline anorexic to, I don't want to say like a massive eating disorder, but I definitely had screwed up thoughts about eating and controlling my body and all that stuff. But I think it's so common, Jason, that people do have this profound sense of you just can't get full because you're climbing up the wrong tree to get your fullness, so you just keep eating, and that's such a common struggle that people have. Do you want to just comment anything on how you overcame that?
Well, it's something that I think, like many of us, I work on still. I still feel the tastes and the flavors of that. And for me, it's when I'm not nourishing myself enough.
Okay.
When I'm working too hard, or when I'm doing too many things, or when I'm too busy, or I'm stressed out because I'm in some kind of relationship issue. Yeah. I find myself trying to nourish myself in that way. And ultimately, in Paul's choice model of optimal choice, suboptimal choice, or do nothing choice, which has two components, the apathy, which is the worst choice, or I need more time to make a decision. I'm making a suboptimal choice in there, which is instant gratification to something that I think is going to fulfill me, but ultimately leads to the pain teacher, which it brings suffering, but ultimately, if you stay awake enough, can reorient you back to your dream by having the awareness of what growth is coming from that experience, right? So if you think about people that are addicted to alcohol, we call alcohol spirits. But what Carl Jung talks a lot about is that it's really someone's lacking of a relationship to spirit, or a great spirit, to something larger than themselves, that they're actually trying to chase through alcohol. And we all know that, you wake up the next morning, and despite how good you might have felt at the moment, you feel like crap in the morning, and it's just this never-ending loop. So one of the tips that I've learned in process work, which I think might be useful to people in this state, is to slow down what's happening. So let's just say I'm reaching for the refrigerator, and I can catch myself, right? And I start, okay, let me just go very slowly in slow motion, back and forth. This action of going and grabbing.
So literally, physically slowing.
I'm slowing it. I'm moving slowly, and I'm feeling into what is this? What am I reaching for? What's actually happening here? And all of a sudden, I'm realizing that I'm turning into this like bear, and then amplifying that, and all of a sudden I'm like growling, Rawr! And just putting food in my, not metaphorically, putting food in my mouth and just throwing things away, and I'm taking on this energy of whatever just got inspired through me by this kind of inner visioning and this imaginal process. And then I could really see, where do I need more of that in my life in a constructive way? Where do I need to just take things that I want? Where do I need to be, have that kind of rawness, or that connection to nature, or using my gut instincts, or anything that kind of comes out of it, because these states are really can be used as dream doors to a process that's trying to get your attention. All of these things that are disturbing us, body symptoms or addictions or relationship challenges or misfortunes, they're all there to awaken us up to something, a deeper process inside of ourselves that's trying to get us to evolve and grow. So instead of looking at that situation as, oh yeah, here I am again, overeating, what's really trying to happen? Oh, well, there's a bear that's trying to come out of me. And how do I live more like that bear? Maybe I need to go out in nature. Maybe I need to live more aggressively. Maybe I need to hibernate a little bit, right? Or whatever it is. And I'm just using that bear because it's spontaneously coming out in the moment, but it could be anything for somebody. It could be a bird. It could be an image of a Buddha or a grandmother or whatever it is. But these situations are here to awaken us up. They're actually in Arnie Mendel's work and in the work of Carlos Castaneda and the books about Don Juan, they're called allies, which is sort of very paradoxical because you say, how is my addiction my ally? How is my challenge with this person? How are they my ally? How is my body symptom my ally? But just as Paul uses the pain teacher, they're there to awaken us and to get us to evolve.
And in Native American cultures, they always thank the addiction or they thank the unwanted thing because they acknowledge the lesson and may open themselves to what that is. Like, thank you for pointing this out to me, making me aware of something, and now I will receive your teaching. And there you go back to the yin state of, and even just your physical act of literally slowing your arm down as you reach into the refrigerator, you're bringing conscious awareness and that yin energy of not just rushing through and mindlessly self-medicating and turning off our conscious brain and just stuffing our face because we're just needing something right then. We're needing something that we're not giving ourselves.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and of course there's many other sort of consensus reality doctor approaches to that. We might be thirsty. We might need rest, tired, right? There's various other things, but I was sort of giving an example on sort of a deeper level of this dreamland level where what is this sort of dreamlike archetypal process that's happening inside of me?
Excellent. And the over-masculinization of not only women, but even, sometimes men or all people, all of us, because as you know, we're both, is a common thing especially at a ambitious, entrepreneur, go-getter type personality. So you mentioned that you had to focus more on the being rather than the doing, like so many of us do. Can you share with us some actual practical, literal things that you did, Jason, to help be more in your yin flow state in a normal day, though, in a day that, and you, just for the audience, you're an extremely accomplished guy. You have a lot of balls in the air. You're doing a lot of things, so you get a lot going on. So you're not just going to lay around all day and just lay in the sun. So how do you bring more of the yin energy into yourself while being productive and busy and accomplished?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of different techniques, right, that we could talk about, from meditation to mantras, to breath work, to cold showers, to sauna, to sleep, to these various things. But what I think might be more of a meta position on this is to talk about really why to do rituals in the first place. What are rituals and why do we do them, right? So the word ritual comes from the Sanskrit word ritam, R-I-T-T-A-M. And the ritam are the purposeful laws of nature. Okay, so we live in a world that's dark. We have electricity and we have lights and computers and all these things that are shining all around us. But at some point in the not so distant past, we lived in a completely dark world. And when the sun came up in the morning, it would be very evident that the light was returning. So there was a name for this light, and it was called Agni. And so this light and fire sat at the center of human existence. We were all fire users before fossil fuels and computers. We were all fire users, and we also had these great relationships to the trees. With the trees, we're literally lovers with the trees. We have mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. We're breathing out carbon dioxide. They're taking it in, converting it to oxygen, and we're breathing that back. That's all being converted through the sun and through water, right? These trees shed off their limbs, graciously shed off their limbs, which we would go out into nature and collect the fallen down branches, bring them back into our house and light a fire. That fire had to be respected because it could burn down our house if we didn't control it. We had to then extract metals from the earth and make a pot with fire into something that can actually withstand fire so we can cook our food in it. And then we would give an offering up to the devas or the devis or this archetypal realm of the intelligence behind what's being evoked in the experiences we're having, right? So we live in this archetypal realm. We cannot make a cup until the idea of the cup is in our mind. So we plan to make this cup based on the archetype. And we live in the midst of these archetypes. And this is the purposeful cause and effect, which is called science. But unfortunately, our modern science has taken away that relationship with the purposeful laws of nature. We can look at a hummingbird and we could figure out how many times it's flapping its wings a second. But we don't think about what was the intelligence that created this beauty? How did we create these bodies? How did we create these trees? What was the intelligence that created this amazing reciprocity between the sun and the water and the rivers? And the water goes up to the sky and then it comes down in rain and it's cleansed and it flows into our streams, into our rivers, and we can bathe in it and we can grow our food in it and it can grow trees, and then the trees give off their limbs which we can collect and make fires out of, right? So anything in this tangible state of matter had a blueprint stage, and all these ideas had to be bring into nature, right? So every time you light a fire, which is turning on your stove in this day and age, we should be talking to this archetypal realm, because we literally just evoked their existence, right? So in the Veda culture, they have an initiation called the Gayatri mantra. And this was an idea that when the sun rises every morning, the light is returning. And if you didn't have electricity, you were completely in the dark until the sun came up. And so it's quite dramatic when the sun rises. And this is a symbiotic relationship that needs to be sung about and articulated. So if I could just share this mantra with you and the audience, it goes Om Bu Bhuva Sva Tat Savitor Varanium Bargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yona Prachodayat. So Om Bu Bhuva Sva, above where I am, below where I am, and where I am. Tat Savitor Varanium, the light of the sun is shining everywhere. From that sun is coming the masculine and the feminine principle. The masculine is the sun itself, and the feminine principle are the rays that are shining to all of us. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. In my intrinsic nature, I am just like that light. So we should be dancing and singing that the sun has come back. What is it like when there's no sun for a week and it's just fog and rain? We want it to go. Diyo Yona Prachodayat. I adore that great light so I may shine like it. And this was the original idea of enlightenment that started thousands of years ago in the morning, where there was a good morning mantra to teach all humans to sing to the laws of nature and to remember all day long that we are just like that sun that's shining within inside of ourselves. So this relationship with this archetypal or Devic realm is critical. The laws of nature are enacted from that dimension, and they're brought into manifestation in our planet. And if we don't finish this off by putting the ashes from the fire we created back into the soil in 2 or 3 or 4 generations, we'll have completely destroyed the soil, which we've already done, and we'll be growing, nutrient deficient foods, and we'll be growing people that are less and less healthy and less intelligent. So it's being in this state of reciprocity and gratitude. It's not, we don't just have a meal and say, okay, burp, that was great, turn on CNN. It's like, thank you for making this meal, and what can I do? Can I do the dishes? Can I clean up? Can I make part of the dinner? in these cultures, they would look at the cows, right? In India, they revere cows. Why do they revere cows? They revere cows not only because they're friendly and they have relationships with, because if their children didn't have milk from their mother, the cow's milk would save the baby's life. It was like a surrogate mother. And they could take milk and turn it into butter and then heat it up and make ghee, which can last on a shelf for over 50 years in animal fat. And the cow dung could be turned into incense that was an antiseptic and a mosquito repellent, and the cows, the bulls, could pull the plow to farm the fields, right? So, our cows are in concentration camps. Our fish are dying in the rivers, streams, and oceans. All of our trees are being cut down in an alarming rate. We need to bow down to the cows, trees, and rivers, honoring them as divine, seeing them as representations of the divine. And, as the Native Americans say, Mitakuye, all of my relations. We must remember this because our civilization will make us forget it. Always remember and never forget that we are a part of this ritam, this purposeful laws of nature. So back to your original question, anything that you can do that gets you connected with this reciprocity of being in this cycle of life, being part of this wheel, not taking too much, not giving too little, connecting with the fact that there is an intelligence that is informing you, just like as above, so below, just said it's like informing the mother nature, it's informing you, and that you're a part of this greater whole. And that's the important thing for me, is connecting to that, which we could talk about various ways. But before we got into the sort of the stages or the practices or the tapasyas of what to do, the question needs to be asked, why are we doing this?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and are you familiar with the term Aini, which is the principle of reciprocity? And that's what you're talking about. It's just so integral to all the ancient cultures that even they would teach, you don't even take a stone off the ground without offering Mother Earth something back, or leaving tobacco or something. Like it's a give and a take, and the law of giving and receiving I talk about a lot on the show, because a lot of people have a hard time with receiving, which is kind of ironic because we're taking so much from the earth, basically without consciousness, is what I hear you saying. So to become more conscious and have more reverence and appreciation, acknowledgement, because that's what we are, right? We're ultimately taking from ourselves. I mean, it's a finite resource, that's for sure.
Well, if you turn on Netflix, you could find a half a dozen documentaries that are showing how we literally are destroying the earth. I mean, you don't have to look very far to realize that we're not in this reciprocity.
Yeah.
And why are we not in that reciprocity? Well, we don't connect with this archetypal realm. We don't think about the intelligence behind it, and we also have, for the most of us have in the West, a one lifetime worldview. We think we only have one shot at it, so we might as well live it up. Take, drill, spend it all. Just only think about me, and there's no consequences of it all. And that's a real poison, because the Native Americans and all of the indigenous cultures think about 7 generations behind you and 7 generations in front of you. May each act be done in a way that appropriately affects the next 7 generations, so that your children and their children and their children have a place to live. And we're right on the cutting edge of that not being possible.
Yep. We're at a very pivotal time. So I'm curious, how long has it been since you've been out of being in the stock market and the life as a trader that you talked about, your previous life?
Yeah, I retired in 2019, so it's been about 3 or so years.
So I'm just curious now, you've done some quick learning with all the study that you've done, where you're at now, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, that's for sure. But what would you say to all those people that were back in your office that saw this dude bring in a standing desk, and all of a sudden he's eating out of his own Tupperware and he's drinking bottled water, fancy smancy, he's got some weird ball he's sitting on. That's just so foreign to that whole world, but all those people are still, caught up living that type of lifestyle. Yeah. What would you say to reach them, Jason, now? Because that was you at one time. They're on this treadmill, so to speak. So knowing what you know now, what would you have needed to hear when that was you, to reach them?
Yeah, well, there's a great saying that one of my teachers, Jeffrey Armstrong Kavindarichi, taught me, which is never for conversion, not with coercion, only with conversation, right?
Beautiful.
So somebody has to be ready and willing and asking, hey, how did you do that? How did you change your body so much? What's making you so successful? Why is your skin so radiant? Why do you have so much energy? Why are you eating in that particular way? Tell me more, right? So first somebody has to sort of be Adhi Kari or ready for that kind of conversation. When I was back in that world, I mean, of course, it's a very sort of fraternal world. So there's a bit of like locker room play amongst people. And so I'm sure I got a fair bit of jokes and things like that along the way, which I took in stride. But the reality is that my performance spoke for itself. So, these things were not only helping me evolve as a human being, but they were making me a better trader. They were making me a more optimized trader, right? So my performance was speaking for itself. And so people started to naturally ask questions, and it was really by being the silent lover that happened. They started naturally incorporating more organic food into the cafeteria. On Wednesdays, all of a sudden they started having this barbecue outside where they'd bring in, organic food. Wow. It wasn't probably 6 or 7 years after I got my first standing desk, they renovated the entire trading floor and everyone got standing desks. Wow. So, really it was just by being myself and letting my actions speak for themselves. I did it at the beginning because not only did it make me feel better, but it also made me a better performer. You cannot put McDonald's canola oil into your Ferrari and expect it to work. People think you could just put processed foods into your body and then you're going to be working at your top level. But your body takes more energy to convert that junk food into something that it can use than it is getting from the food itself. So if you really want to be at the top of your game in anything you do, you have to take care of the vehicle you're in. You have to eat right for your body type. You have to drink the right amount of water for your weight and for your body and for your level of activity. You have to move your body appropriately. You have to have the right amount of rest, introspection, reflection, contemplation, meditation. And you have to be doing what you love to do and enjoying it. And when you have all those combined, you're going to be at the top of your game. So for me, it was not only sort of the path of individuation or this yogic path, it was also practical and functional in helping me become a better business person.
Yeah, well, success speaks for itself, right? I mean, we are living examples of our mindset, of our lifestyle, of our methods, and it speaks for itself, that's for sure. Tell me, what in the 11 years and counting that you've had working personally with Paul Chek, I'm curious, what would you say is your biggest lesson from him? I know there's been many, 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 as I've had as well, but would you have a biggest lesson?
That's a good question. We've had so many deep experiences. What's coming to me in this moment is this idea of having a relationship with my soul.
Yeah, me too.
In the Vedas, we call that the Atma. It's this part of ourself identifying with a deeper part of ourself and using that as the guide to guide all of our decisions, whether or not that's what we're eating or what job we take, what flight to take, whether or not we should be working out or working in, or even, seemingly unimportant things in life. But it's having that relationship, seeing yourself as that and having a relationship with that and letting that guide everything you do. Because when you're coming from that vantage point, that's sort of the missing vitamin or the essential piece that everything else comes off from. You can learn about diet, you can learn about exercise, you can learn about creativity or shamanism, but if you're not identifying with an immortal, individual part of yourself and coming from there and moving outward into the world, then you're really not having the appropriate foundation. So learning about the soul and connecting with my soul, learning the techniques through starting with muscle testing and then learning some other techniques like soul connection, learning how to talk to other people's souls, learning how to connect that way, learning how to talk to plants and even rocks and all of these different beings in nature that are alive. That's probably the most important thing, because that's sort of the fundamentals of life.
That's it. I mean, that's the whole game right there. I mean, what you just described is it. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. And I'll share that that's pretty much my biggest lesson with Paul too. I call it being inner directed versus outer directive, you know, rather than reacting to the world around you and looking outside yourself for answers and what should I do, and reacting to what's happening around you, going within and being like, okay, what's best for me? You know, learning from all these masters and teachers and experts, so to speak. But at the end of the day, you have to weigh it against your own heart, your own intuition, your own soul, and make the best decision for you.
That's using the internet versus the internet.
I love it. I never heard that one before.
You know, we use cell phones.
Internet, love
we use cell phones and wireless technologies, but we forget that the cells in our body also have a Wi-Fi that can connect to things outside of ourselves. That are, you know, as Paul talks about, our DNA is sort of an antenna that's giving and receiving signals and transmitting. And we all know this idea of connecting down inside of ourselves, and then these ideas can just pop in that we don't even know where they come from, right? And so there's this whole thing that inside in this internet, we have access to wireless technology, and that's the essence of yoga. It's putting yourself in a particular posture or in a state of mind that you can access these other frequencies and these other vibrations outside of yourself.
Yeah, you're literally setting your physical body up like an antenna, like rabbit ears on a TV.
Exactly.
Or, you know, our biogeometry training of the quality of shape information. And beautiful stuff.
Spot on.
And, you know, for that matter, you're the reason why biogeometry came to the Chek Institute, right?
Well, I don't know about that for sure. I mean,
the one that shared it with Paul initially, right?
Well, you know, I've really felt that when I left the trading world, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with everything, and I started making all these different connections and meeting all these different people and setting up. Okay, you go with this person, and you go with this person, and you go on this podcast, and none of it was really for me. It was just all kind of giving and connecting. And there were times when my humanness came up and said, "Oh, what about me? You know, I'm a little bit jealous. I want to be on this or that." But I really just kind of gave freely, probably for the first time in my life. And now I'm really seeing that reciprocity coming back.
Nice.
You know, being called onto something like a show like yours, right? But you know, there were a lot of people who flirted with biogeometry to me and my wife Kara. Paul had known about it and mentioned it to us. But ultimately, what ultimately happened is we had a biogeometry team come into our house, the rental house we're living in now, and they're also, you know, this extended to Dr. Karim and Dureya, helping us design our entire property that we're building, that we're moving in November, which I'd be happy to talk about. But we had all these profound experiences with biogeometry. We were living in this really nice house, and we had this really bad sulfur-smelling water. I don't know if anybody has ever experienced that with well water, but it's like really hard water and it just stinks. So we move into this house, turn on the shower, and it smells like rotten eggs. And we're like, what the heck is this? You know, like you can't even bathe in it. It's terrible. And so we put all of these filters in and all of these different systems, and nothing would take it out. And we had biogeometry coming in, and they walked into our house and said, you know, we have this really bad smell. I don't know. It's just this really bad smelling water. And by the end of the day, after correcting all of the grid lines and by harmonizing the house, the smell was completely gone and never came back. And that was just like a green light that there's something to this. So Kara actually took the first foundational training. And when I saw her at home using the pendulums and being able to measure and talk to her environment and talk to her food and see what was raising her frequency or lowering her frequency or what had BG3 or what didn't, I was just thinking to myself, I just cannot rely on her to measure something for me. I have to do this myself. So I took the foundation training. Kara and I both took the advanced training together. And we ultimately did connect Dureya and Dr. Karim with Paul. And that relationship has just flourished. And now I think the Chek Institute is going to be offering, or maybe they already are, I'm not sure, offering biogeometry products and possibly even courses with Angie through their system.
Yeah.
So it's just been great. I mean, for me, knowing that there are these pods around the earth of people's homes that are harmonized, right? That, knowing that more places have cubes in their homes or have biogeometry practitioners that have harmonized their homes. And if we can link up enough of these around the globe, then we'll have the whole globe will be harmonized with biogeometry, and we'll be living in a much different state. So that's really my motivation, is just to help spread this. And that's why we've had Dr. Karim and Durea advising us on our whole property from every aspect, from the design to the placement of the well, to the positioning of the house, to the orientation of the garden, to every single building material, to harmonizing the water pipes and the electricity pipes and the cable or the internet lines, the shape of our pond, and I mean it just goes on and on. The shapes of the driveway and the trails, all to create this perfect vortex of BG3 that
Power center.
is essentially the same quality of energy that Dr. Karim recognized was at all sacred power spots across the world. They all had the same quality of energy that he called BG3 or Biogeometry 3. There were these sort of three different qualities of light that if you went to the Great Pyramids or you went to Stonehenge or these various places in the world where they have archaeological digs and they'd find a temple on top of a church, on top of a mosque, on top of a temple, on top of a church, over a mosque. And he was asking, why are they building for hundreds or thousands of years in these same spots when they can literally be anywhere? Well, because of the Earth's energy in that spot. The Earth has particular power spots and particular spots that are detrimental that can cause either positive or negative effects in our health. And so through the physics of quality, as you mentioned, which is basically using shape or color or sound or various numbers and various other qualities, you can affect your environment so that you can turn what might be a harmful technology like a 5G tower or a Wi-Fi router or your electric car or your electricity in your house. You can turn that all into a harmonious energy that is actually working for you. So the technology is working, but it's also producing a healing energy in your space.
Yeah, it's truly game changing, for sure. I can't wait to have Dr. Karim on my show. I know his book is just coming out, and he promised me that I'd be top of the list to come on the show. And I just, that man just eludes love. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him actually in the flesh in person, but I went through the advanced training as you did. So just digitally online, just my exposure to him has just been like, I'm just in awe of him. You can just feel his energy coming through the airwaves. But the closest I had was when I did actually meet Deepak Chopra. There was a palatable physical presence that he had that it just like, it almost took my breath away to be around him. And I can imagine have you been in person with Dr. Karim, or are they advising your home digitally?
Yeah, it's all been digital, but my experience has been the same with him. He's as close to a Buddha as I think.
Or a reincarnated pharaoh or something.
Yeah, I mean he's just got the biggest heart. He's a wealth of knowledge. He's always smiling. He's got this childlike playfulness and curiosity.
Beyond brilliant.
And he's just one of the great beings on this planet. And
without a doubt.
I could only hope that his work makes it onto mainstream.
Well, you certainly did your share in helping that, Jason. Wow, you are just an incredible person with incredible generosity as well. And, for that regard, what would you say at this time in your life, Jason, is your special medicine that you're here to give the world?
Wow, it's a great question. I mean, I'm particularly interested in being a bridge between these two worlds.
Okay.
I've sat with the titans of Wall Street and the titans of industry and some of the great masters of the heart and the soul. And I'm really interested in helping people that are in that business and that sort of executive world, wanting to perform at their best, but also want to know, hey, I think there's something more out there. They're starting to ask questions about what's my purpose? Why am I here? Why am I doing all this? How do I take care of myself? How do I feel something deeper in my life? Because this is insatiable. I have an insatiable thirst that's not being fulfilled by what I'm doing. And, so sort of walking the path that I've walked, and I see myself as a bridge between those two worlds. Somebody who understands that business world and the organizational world and the stresses of that world and what it takes to be at your best in that space, but also who's now walked the path of knowledge and wisdom with some of these great teachers and being a bridge to connect the two.
That's perfect. And I'd say you're well on your way on that path. You are doing it.
Thank you.
Amazing. So is there anything else, Jason, that's on your heart? I know we're coming up to time here, and there's so much knowledge to share. I mean, so many things we could have talked about, but anything else that's really like, yeah, I want to share this today?
Well, you and I had talked about the divine masculine and the divine feminine, but I'm hesitant to get into it if we don't have a lot of time, because I don't think it's a topic that can be said in a few minutes. So,
well, you know what? Please share what you feel needs to be said. If you got a few minutes, then please go there.
Yeah, I have time. So,
okay, thank you.
Yeah, so, I humbly try to approach this topic. I am by no means an expert on the divine masculine and feminine, but I've learned some things that I think are important to share. So, the Vedas and other indigenous cultures like shamanism are really teaching us the proper understanding of the masculine and feminine divine that can be understood, lived, and its roots in the ultimate source of everything. So this is a missing vitamin, right? Having a masculine-only divine is a real poison. And when I'm speaking of masculine and feminine, I want to make a point that this is not a gender discussion. Yeah. This is an energy that's evident throughout nature. If you pay attention to nature, you see that there are these more masculine and more feminine components, and they're personified in this divine realm, right? So in the Vedas, there is Shiva, the masculine principle, and there's Shakti, the feminine principle. The sun, as we talked about, is Shiva, the source, and the sun rays that nourish us are the Shakti. So the Shakti is the purpose. So without Shakti, Shiva would not wake up. And so one thing that we don't realize that we are basically like orphaned children. We really don't know our parents. We have these cosmic parents, these cosmic role models, this divine masculine and feminine, and our entire experience is a dance of opposites. So it's said that the man penetrates with the body and the female penetrates with the heart. And the responsibility of the female intelligence is to lead the man into that realm. The female is the keeper of those secrets. Women are like the night, the mystery, and the stars. And they really should not try to become like the day, to kind of be like men. And at the same time, we are really emasculating our men and are also misinformed about women's experiences. So we prepare those in male bodies to be violent and to prepare for somebody else's war. And we knock out the sensitivity in them, that we knock out their ability to be in relationship with the feminine, to see the feminine as a teacher, because it's way too complicated. If you're going out to war, you don't want to have that sensitivity, right? So in ancient times, before men would go into battle, they'd ask Durga or Mother Earth for permission to go to war. Yeah. They'd sing mantras to Durga and say, Durga, is this action, is this battle I'm about to take, is this dharmic? Is this in my dharma? And is this according to what's good for the greater whole and the greater community?
And they ask the women.
Right. Do I have permission to take one of your children?
Yep.
Right? And they would have to sit there and say these mantras and say these prayers until they could get this sort of knowing or this integration in their body that, yes, this is a worthy cause or not. In ancient times, females ran the tribes and ran the households. So females ran the whole households and actually owned the homes, and men would just have like a protective kind of role. And so we have all of these kind of ideas and ideals about these various parts of nature. So there's in the Vedas, there's Brahma and Saraswati, which are the masculine and feminine creator, and that's the creative realm. There's Vishnu and Lakshmi, representing the maintaining process through the masculine and feminine. And we have Shiva and Durga representing the masculine and feminine recycling process. But much of Christianity and Islamic and other parts of Abrahamic religions went around and said, oh, that's just idol worshiping. That should be bad and that should be removed. But if you think about it, idols are ideals. If you have a thought in your mind, that thought is an image. And that image is an ideal. And that ideal is an idol. So if you want to break idols, paradoxically, you must break your own head. So if you hate idol worship, that's actually an ideal in itself, and that's a belief in your head. And so you must crack your own idol or your own beliefs or your own head, right? So, we have destroyed this idea of this masculine and feminine divine. In our culture, you can show women in bikinis or in pornography, but you can't breastfeed in public, right? Yeah. Menstruation is supposed to be a sacred time, each time being a mystery. And this is completely not respected for most people. And men actually have these cycles too. It's not as obvious for us, but we have these cycles, right? We all have various times of the month where we have a creative time, a maintaining time, and a cleansing, recycling, or letting go time. Nature embodies this, and there are cycles of nature that are ruled by the moon, and as above, so below. So the way the earth is ruled by the moon with these cycles, so are our bodies. And so just to bring this into process work for a second, in process work, they teach us to identify these roles, but to be fluid in them. So often we get into these ideas of, oh, well, a man has to be like this. My dad said a man is like the, tough guy, and a woman has to be like this. And in our family, we never get angry. Or in our family, we always do this, or we always do that. And we get to these ideas and we get into these roles. And often the way we meet our partner, just like the childhood dream, is this pilot wave of our life. The roles that we're in when we meet an intimate partner also kind of get stuck and act as like a mythical role in our life. So, in relationships, there will be somebody that says, well, I'm always the one who initiates sex, and you're the one who never does. You're the disciplinarian. I'm the fun one with the kids, right? So the idea is to switch roles in relationships, not to allow a particular gender or what society has told you men or women should be like, but to be fluid and to have access to all of these things, right? So there's just a story or two, if I have time to share, that I think might really kind of bring this all home. So Krishna and Radha, the masculine and feminine divine, okay? They're in this rasa, which is this dance, this flavor of love. And they're making themselves like extremely beautiful. There's this moonlit night that all of the gopis are around them. And, they're looking into each other's eyes. And there's this kind of competition that starts to take place between looking at each other and seeing the beauty. And when they would look at each other, and when Krishna would look at Radha and see her beauty, he would get more beautiful. And then when Radha would look at Krishna and see his beauty, she would get more beautiful. And this went on and on and on and on until Krishna finally leaned over and kissed Radha on the lips. And she went into this full-blown state of ecstasy beyond anything he could understand. He had nothing to compare it to. And so this is this competition between this masculine and feminine, this competition between increment and measurement, this idea of wanting to measure everything, compared to these things that we just can't understand. Radha's ecstasy was not something that was even thinkable. And that's what the feminine can symbolically bring us into, these other states. So in the story, Krishna actually had to appear back on earth as a man named Chaitanya, or I'm not sure if it was, I think it was as a human, we'll say named Chaitanya, and picked up Radha's mood. He actually had to pick up her mood so he could experience that ecstasy instead of trying to measure it or understand it with his mind, which is more of a masculine principle.
So he had to become one with it, to be it, to experience it.
To experience it. He had to move out of the thinking realm.
Yeah, that's the principle of Eros, too.
Into the emotional realm, right? And there's just one more great story that I would love to tell, if that's okay. There was this great yogi named Uddhava, and he was a master intellectual, right? And he could see the subtle potencies of Krishna. He was such an advanced yogi, but he didn't know the power of humility or vulnerability, right? So Krishna sees this and says, oh yeah, you think you're all knowing, super smart, you're the smartest guy. I need to help you. So Krishna plans this trick for Uddhava. So Krishna's a king at the time, and Uddhava can see his like divine radiance. And, to him, Krishna is this sort of this the supreme being here avataring or here descending down to earth as a supreme being. And he's seeing Krishna weeping. And he's saying, Krishna, why are you weeping? Why are you weeping over the love of the gopis and of Radha? And he said, oh, their tears are coming into me. I'm remembering them, and they're remembering me. I'm longing for them, and they're longing for me. And this separation, this longing, the pain might not be the right word, but this longing for them is flowing through me. He goes, oh, you're just tricking me. Krishna, just give him the knowledge. Just give him the knowledge. Let him know that, you're immortal and none of this matters. And so they don't feel this unnecessary pain and longing. And Krishna says, okay, that's a brilliant idea. Why don't you go teach him this? Why don't you go teach him the path of knowledge? So Uddhava goes, they're not going to believe me. Can I get a letter from you? Can you write a letter saying it's from you and to give him this knowledge? So Krishna writes the letter like, dear the gopis and Radha or whatever, sends it with Uddhava. Uddhava goes, he brings it to the gopis, and the gopis, before he could even open up the letter, they can just smell the scent of the letter, that it's coming from Krishna. And they just rip it up into a million pieces, and they're just washed in this ocean of love. And Uddhava's like, I don't understand. Like, these people these women have just gone completely mad, right? So he goes to Radha, and he goes and he challenges her a little bit, but she's so vulnerable and humble. And she begs him to beg Krishna not to take away her pain, not to take away, because that's this presence. And Uddhava can't make sense of it. And the story goes that Radha starts talking to these bumblebees, and she's sort of initiating Uddhava through speaking to these bumblebees and saying, oh, bumblebees, you're just going from lover to lover to lover. You don't really care about the flower. You don't really care about me. You're just here 1 minute and here the next. And Uddhava in that moment understands and is completely enlightened to the fact that this essence of love, this longing that she's talking about, is beyond logical conclusion. He realizes it's not about becoming a perfect genius. It's about this experience. And in that moment, he loses his words, he loses his knowledge, and he starts to sing. And he dedicates himself to the praises of Krishna and Radha and singing all of these mantras. So this is the wealth of devotion. This is what happens with the marriage of the feminine and the masculine. And this is a dance that needs to be understood between what we can know and what we can't know.
Yes, I would say the longing and the fruition, that I love that you said the dance, the sacred marriage.
It's really interesting because if you think about it, what is more powerful is like being with the partner or that longing and that separation.
Yeah, or the anticipation of being.
Yeah, like being away can be just so powerful, right? And so, this is, emotions are much deeper than thoughts. And that's the marriage of the masculine and the feminine. That's what the divine feminine can teach us. And that's what we've really lost in our culture with a solely divine masculine only mentality.
I'll share. I've studied with Regina Thomas Hauser, who's also known as Mama Gena, and she had a women's art school in New York, and author of many books, and she's pretty out there as far as her takes on women's practices. And she was big on the fact that the feminine is the longing. It's like you got to really kind of double down on that part of you that doesn't quite have it yet, but you have to be okay with that and just kind of luxuriate in that space of the not having, but with pleasure. The pleasure of anticipating, like you said, like that's a big feminine essence quality that not only isn't respected very much in this day and age, but isn't understood or appreciated, I think, because we want to just have it done, like just do it, like get the house, get the relationship, have it, be it, like don't, look, it's that liminal period where we're, I don't want to say waiting, but we don't have it yet, so to speak, but enjoying that journey of coming to it, of getting it.
Yeah, and all these are inside of ourselves.
Yeah.
In the shamanic cultures, they believe that each one of us has an adult male, adult female, a young girl, and a young boy, and that only when we can fulfill all four of those parts in ourselves can we be fully actualized and move into our soul essence or the center. So when we're talking about masculine and feminine, we're not trying to put people into any particular roles based on their genders or what they identify with. These are energies that we're using metaphorically that's inside of all of us. We all have the essence of Krishna. We all have the essence of Radha inside of us. We all have the creation, the maintaining, and the recycling principles. We all have the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And we just need to wake up to that and let it flow through us.
And as I've said, the Tao symbol is the symbol of that interplay, the fluidity between the two. Jason Pickard, thank you so much. You're obviously a wealth of knowledge and information. You and I could go on for hours and hours. And I just thank you so much. Is there anywhere where you want to direct the audience or anything you want to share? Yeah,
just the best way to contact me is my website, jasonpickard.org.
Oh, it's done. Okay.
Yeah, JASONPICKARD.org. Mm-hmm. And you can contact me there. You can read a little bit about me. That's the best way.
Awesome. And that'll be in the show notes, everybody. And remember, you can watch this on YouTube at Awakening Aphrodite Podcast, FitAmyTV. My Instagram is FitAmyTV. And you can take a look at what Jason, someone of his stature, looks like in real life, the living example of his mindset and his practices. And if you enjoyed the show, please share it, subscribe. And you also might be interested in episode 79, where I interview Molly Larkin, who was an apprentice of Bearheart, who was a Native American shaman. And that was just one of the most popular episodes that we've had on the show. And we go into a lot of the concepts that Jason talks about in this show today.
And I have to say also, the episode with my brother was amazing that you did.
Thank you so much. Yes, your brother. I mean, wow. Is there just the two of you, or are there more siblings? Okay. Yeah. Wow. What a family that your parents have put out. These two men that, and that's episode, what is that, Jason, number?
One of the last couple that came out.
Yeah, most recent, in the high 90s. And he talks about his work with biodynamic farming, regenerative agriculture. We talk about organics. Is it worth it? And he's another just wealth of knowledge. So, wow. Can't wait to meet both of you in person one day, hopefully soon.
Amazing. Can't wait. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
You got it, Jason. And thanks, everybody, for listening and watching. We'll see you next time. Would you like to support my mission to help empower people all over the world to be all of who they truly are? If so, please subscribe to the show, leave a review on iTunes, and share it with a friend. And if you're looking to take immediate action to align your energy and optimize your health, visit amyfournier.com. Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite. Let's awaken her together in you. I'm your hostess, Amy Fournier, and I already can't wait to be with you again and for you to hear what I have planned for the next show.
Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. To learn more about Amy, check out her website, amyfournier.com. That's AMYFOURNIER.com. You can also check out Amy's live and on-demand virtual fitness and yoga classes and sign up for her newsletter to receive a free mini ebook of 3 of her top tips for making holistic health a lifestyle. Again, that's amyfournier.com and get your ebook sent to your email immediately. Connect with Amy on the daily on Instagram at FitAmyTV, FitAmyTV, and watch many of the podcast episodes and subtopic clips on her YouTube channel, which is also FitAmyTV. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time on Awakening Aphrodite.